In the last chapter, we modeled the hub of the steering wheel, as you can see here, and we added an extension to the actual steering column, which allowed us to pin it into place. We also modeled the pin. At the base of the steering column, we added on this screw thread here, so we could actually screw on the bolt here to hold this in place. And what we're going to add in this chapter is the steering wheel itself, and also we're going to add some cables for the accelerator and brake pedals that you can see here and here. I've actually modeled these, added these elements in here. They pivot this at this point here, and they pull a cable here, and this goes through these tubes all the way to the back of the actual go-kart, and they would then interface with the brakes and the engine. We're not going to model those elements because we don't actually have time in this particular DVD or series, but I've just put these in here just to allow us to see these particular elements because I thought they were particularly suited to working with the loft tool. So we'll look at that later. But anyway, let's make a start with the actual steering wheel. So for that, we're going to need some kind of cross section. So we'll start off with a circle. What I'm going to show you here is a different approach to actually modeling, which means that we can model this spline here flat, and then we can actually work with it in situ up here. So I'm just going to shift drag this to here, and I want to change it into a reference, not an instance, because I want it to be slightly different from the original. If I say OK, what this means is, and this is explained in detail in our proceduralism DVD yet again, this means that from this point on, this spline is independent of this spline, but up until this point, it forms from the same geometry. So what I can do now is I can go in, affect the pivot point, move it to here, say, into this position here. And now I can go and add a lathe modifier onto it. So we just go down here to lathe. I believe it's X. And there we have a very basic steering wheel. If you go on here and you change the radius here, you can see that we can actually modify this. So there's a link between this and this, but it's not an instance. It's done using referencing instead. So now we need to unfreeze these elements here. So let's just click on here so we can snap to it. And I'm going to select the steering wheel. And I'm just going to use the align tool just to snap on here. And we're going to align to that. That's cool. You can see it's at 90 degrees, but basically we've got an alignment. We can just make a slight adjustment now. So we just need to go through 90 degrees here. And also the positioning means that it's kind of intersecting with the frame a bit. So we're just going to move this up here a little bit. And here we go. So now there we have a steering wheel. You can see. Let's have a look at the overall proportions of that. That actually looks quite good, but it's a little bit obviously too chunky. And at the moment it's very basic. It's very simplistic in its profile. So what we're going to do now is we're going to edit this spline, and that will then update here, and we'll be able to see the results of our modification in place. So let's just zoom in here. Actually, what I'll do is change to a different display mode. So let's go to layout, two views. And in this view, we'll go for a shaded mode, and we'll just zoom in to here. And in this view, we'll go for top view. Just close down the panel here. And all these frozen elements are hiding when we go to wireframe mode. So I'm just going to zoom in on here. Remember, the top is here. So this is the inner axis. So what am I going to do to this? Well, what I want to give the impression of is that I've got a wooden inner frame, then I've got some padding on it, and then inside the wooden frame I want a metal frame, which then connects to the spokes that go into the center of the wheel. So the option here is, do I do it using booleans, or do I just modify the spline that I have here? I think I'm just going to modify the spline, but I think I may actually use some rectangles to give me a kind of guide. So let's just create this rectangle, and we'll just align it to here, move it up into position. And what I'm going to do now is just increase the radius here, sorry, the length I should say, a little bit. And we'll just use this as a very basic guide. Just going to zoom in here, change the interpolation on here. I'll get rid of optimize for now. I'll just increase the steps quite a bit. Now I'm going to put an edit spline modifier on it. There we go. Go in here, and I'm just going to refine it. I'm going to refine it there and there, and also here and here also. And let me see, I'm just going to do something here as well, and here. And now I'm going to make some modifications to the spline itself. So let's have a look at what we have here. These need to be Bezier corners, and as do these. We'll say Bezier corner as well. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to bring these in a little bit. The same here. And I'm just going to bring this like this. If you can imagine, these are going to be the wooden parts of the wheel. Now you can see we've got an interesting thing because we've got the padding here, but now we've got these wooden sections. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to make these sections into linear pieces. I'm going to say line. And I want this to be flat, so I'm just going to delete it. I'm just going to move this up here slightly. And I'm going to just turn these into corner pieces, corner control points. Pull them up here slightly. And now what I want to do is I just want to scale this. I'm just going to use this option here. I can scale all of them at the same point from a common center. Scale those out slightly. And now it's looking pretty good, I think. We just need to make some more adjustments here. Scale this down here slightly. I'm going to move this out here. And the same here. And now if we look in here, you can see what I'm doing. I've now created this kind of metal plate in the middle. This is going to be wood. And then here we have the outer padding, which is going to be, say, leather or something like that. So now we've got a pretty good steering wheel. It's still maybe a little bit too chunky. So let's just get all these points, do a scale, scale it inwards. Let's make sure we're not getting any kind of weird deformation when we do that. No, we're not. That's fine. And just scale that inwards slightly. And then I'm going to just move them out. That makes the diameter of the wheel a bit bigger or smaller. Move in towards the axis. Let's say we don't want a huge wheel like this. It'd be silly for a go-kart. Kind of want something, say, that kind of size. That's pretty good. Let's zoom in here to have a look what we've got. Now I'm going to just modify the lathe itself. At the moment it's got 16 segments, which really isn't enough. Let's try 32. Not too bad. Let's try a few more. Try 48, because it's actually quite a large circular element. Yeah, that's really nice. That should be easily enough, as you can see. And now if we go down here, well, that's looking pretty good. So now, the only thing is we've got too many segments on the inside here, and we can fix that just by going in here and changing the interpolation on this to be adaptive or optimized. Let's say it. Let's try adaptive and see what that looks like. Up here. Yeah, that's pretty good. Maybe it's got a few too many going around here. So let's try going down, turn on show end result. We'll just change it to optimize by changing this. It's not bad, is it? So now we've got a pretty cool looking steering wheel. Just make sure it's got good clearance. Yeah, that should work just fine. What we have to do now is create the spokes that go inside here. So let's make a start on those. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually loft those because I want it to be curved and I don't want it to be a straight line between here and here. So extrude isn't really what I want. And maybe at the moment this is a little bit far out. So we'll just bring this down a little bit. And so we know that when we create a loft that we can basically use the instanting features of it to actually make our modeling life a little bit easier. So in here, I'm going to make a path. So let's go to line, corner, corner. Let's just draw a very rough path for now. This will be the curvy part, and this will be the linear part. And we're going to use a circular cross section because we don't need anything more complex on this particular element. And now I'm going to make a loft out of it. So actually first let me just change the pivot point on it. I just want to move the pivot point down to here. Just zoom in a little bit so it's more accurate. There we go. That'll be the pivot point of our loft object when we make it. So I'm going to go down here to compound objects, click on loft, get this shape as an instance so we can change the diameter of it later. There's our basic spoke of our wheel. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to snap this into place. So let me just align this here, click on here, that's fine. Now we need to align it the way we want it to be. So firstly, we want a rotation through, let me just turn on snaps here, through 90 degrees. There we are. Now we want a rotation through 90 degrees on this axis. And now we need to check the position of it. Just move it up here slightly. Actually in the right kind of spot. Down here. Now we can move it along the x-axis. And it sticks out here at the right point. And move it here. And there we are. We basically have our spoke now. But you can see it's actually not really the right kind of shape. It hasn't got the right kind of things we need. So what we're going to do is just zoom in here so we can see this. And we can go down into this view. And I'm just going to modify it very roughly so we get the kind of shape that we need. So I'll move this up here. That's looking good. And just move this out. You can see, so it's now sticking out of the surface. Make this less, not so long. So we just put it so it's just in there. Just now move it down. It's now in the middle. And we can do the same for this as well. This is quite long at the moment. We want it to just stick out a little bit. That's pretty cool. And now I'm going to make it curved. So I'm just going to say these two. Bezier. There we are. So now we have a curved shape. And I'm just going to select these two end pieces. I'm going to say both of these are lines. So we keep that nice and linear. And I just want to adjust this slightly so that we have, yes, it's a nice straight line there. And this is fine, I think. We just need to adjust the curve here. So I'm going to move this down here. And let's have a look at this. Move this up here slightly. We won't have it so it's so S-shaped. We'll just make it a little bit more of a sort of linear line. Actually, let's have a look with it fully curved. Yeah, it looks a bit strange maybe. So let's have this, say, linear here. Let's try S-curving this a bit more. See what that looks like. Yeah, maybe. I think it's probably best just to keep it something like that, really. We can pull this in slightly. And now what I want to do is I want to change its profile along its length. So I'm going to use some of the deformation tools inside the loft. So we're just going to click on here. And we've got the option here. Do we want to fit it or do we want to use scale? Well, in this case, I don't want anything really complex. So I'm just going to go for scale. I'm just going to move it down here. What these tick lines mean here is that at these points you have control points along the path of the loft. So these are good points from where to do your deformations. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say Bezier. Click on these points. Same here. And then I'm going to create, let's say, another point here and another point here. Now I'm going to modify these. I'm just going to move them down vertically. So we're basically scaling inwards. As you can see now we're making it thinner. We don't want it to be too thin, otherwise it'll look very flimsy. That's maybe still a bit too thick. Okay, I think. Let's have a look up here with wireframe turned off. Yeah, I think it looks okay, but maybe this could go in a bit further to here and here. So this wasn't quite as large. So let's just make a modification to the scale profile. We'll just move this in here slightly. And the same here. And let me just adjust this handle here somewhat. There we go. And the same thing here. Just pull this out. Pull this in. Pull this handle out here. We'll pull this handle out here a bit as well. There we are. We can just pull this so we get more of a gradual curve. There we are. I think that looks pretty cool. We've got our spoke, as you can see. And let's say we wanted to make it look like it attached to these surfaces a bit better. What we can do is we can just zoom in here now, and we'll just add some more scaling. So we'll just go here, let's say corner. So what I want to do is I just want to create a little kind of bevel here. Grab this, move this up here, do the same here. There we are. We'll just move this position until we can actually see it sticking out of the surface here a bit better. Not quite there yet. Actually the handle from this which is causing a problem at the moment, so let me just bring this in here a bit. Now we can move these. And I just want to exaggerate it slightly, so I'm just going to move it vertically a little bit. Scroll here so we can adjust the graph slightly. Move this here. Now you can see we've got this sticking out here. I think that looks quite nice. Just make it a little bit more beveled. Just put this down here a little bit. There we are. So that'll catch the light nicely. I'm going to do the same thing now to the other end. So we'll just go down here, zoom in on this point here, add a couple of corner points. And again, we'll just grab this, move it up here, and then zoom out slightly. And now we just need to make adjustments here to bring it so it actually sticks out of the surface slightly. Again, I think we've got a problem with the handle here, this control. So we just need to bring that in so it doesn't overlap. Now we can adjust this. Yeah, we can start to see it now. So I'm just going to grab both of these and move it up further. Looking quite nice, I think. And let's just check the relative sizes. That could probably go out a little bit further. Let's just bring this down slightly. Move these up. There we are. And the reason why all these adjustments are working are because we have the adaptive path steps turned on. If we turn that off, we wouldn't actually really have enough detail to carry out these changes at these points. But with adaptive, whatever we add using these deformations will be adapted to by the adaptation system. So let's have a look at the entire curve now. I think that looks quite nice. Let's try going a little bit thinner, see what that looks like. Yeah, I think that looks quite cool. So now we can just zoom out. There we are. So we've got our spoke in there. And at the moment, the pivot point of this spoke is at the base of the spoke. So if we try rotating it, it'll rotate around that point there. What I want to do is duplicate it around here a few times. And to do that, we need to put the pivot point to the center of the hub here. So I'm going to go into pivot point mode and adjust, affect the pivot only. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say align. Click on here. Click on this object because we know that the pivot is in the middle. We're just going to say OK with that. Go out of pivot mode, and now I can make an adjustment on it. Let's make this a little bit larger. And we can actually rotate this around, and you can see it'll rotate around the center there. I'll just cancel that. We'll just copy it a few times, or rather I should say instance it. I mean, you can see I use instancing all the time because it just makes any kind of adjustments filter down to every object that you have instanced, and it just makes it much easier to work with things if you can do things that way. Let's try making an adjustment here manually and see if we can actually get that. 120 degrees. Yeah, that's fine. We'll go the opposite way with this one. So we'll just go around here, 120 degrees. And there we are. We've got our steering wheel. 3 spokes, curved, and these will be metallic. They'll fit into a metallic inner rim. Then we'll have some kind of wooden rim here, and then we'll have this leather rim here. So there we go. Pretty cool looking little steering wheel. And in the final model, this would actually be covered up here. The centerpiece would be covered up with some kind of logo on a, say, a little badge that actually fits on here and just clips on onto this end piece here. So you'd actually cover up this slightly ugly looking pin and thing here. I mean, I am modeling some things that you wouldn't necessarily do in a real model, but it's just to show you some of the tools in action. And now we'll move on and we'll work on the brake cables. So let me just go back to full screen mode. And we're just going to work on these brake cables here. So these are going to be lofts. I'm going to go to a left-hand view. That doesn't work. Front. Yeah, that does the trick. And what I'm going to go for now is I want to basically draw a spline that goes from here, through here, down through here, and up to here. And then it'll go down here and we'll just leave it go into the frame or something like that. We'll just finish it off in that way. And we're going to do the cable on both sides. So we're going to use the same spline and we're just going to adjust it if needed. And then I'm going to show you a very simple cylindrical cable, and then I'm going to also show you twisted wire cable, just to show you that you can do that kind of effect. So let's start off. We'll just say line, corner, corner. I usually start with a linear kind of thing going on. So let's just draw a line from here to here, drop that into position. There we are, and then we'll just go for something there. And then we'll just drop that. I want to go into wireframe mode, but when I do so, the frozen frame becomes invisible. We just need to unfreeze the frame at this point. So let me just see. We've got the frame visible. So we'll just unfreeze it. Oops. And now I want to make some adjustments here. We'll just hide some of the other elements, which I think are hiding what we need to see here. I just go to shaded mode. Yeah, these primitive elements are also causing problems. So there we are. We'll just basically unfreeze everything. So now we can make an adjustment here. I just want this to go into the end of here. We'll just do so with that. This position for now is fine. We'll just assume that that's okay. I want this to be basically linear, so we'll just move this back up here. We'll just align it. It's kind of linear, and we can just drag it out. We'll drag it down to here. When it comes out of here, it needs to go up to this point up here. So what I'll do is at this point, I'll just say refine, and then we'll just drag this point out here till it goes through this loop, as you can see. So I'll just put this through here. We'll refine that, this point here, and I'll just move it up until it's linear, slightly adjust it downwards, and then we'll just make this go through back to here. Both of these cables go towards this hub here, the back wheel. One of them controls the throttle and one of them controls the brakes. So we'll just basically make them go back to there. We'll just leave them finish off at that point. Now what I want to do is I want to make these slightly more curvilinear, only very slightly though. So just going to select all of the points. I'm going to say all of them should be Bezier corners. Now I'm just going to adjust this point here. So pressing F8 so we get X and Y as the axis to adjust on. Select just that, move this to here. Just have it so it basically gives it a little bit of a line, so when it comes out of here it curves slightly. And it should be very, very minor because it's meant to have some tension on it. You can see the interpolation at the moment is optimizing this so we don't get this curve. So let's just turn off optimize. Just increase the number of steps slightly. We'll go down here, same kind of thing. Adjust this, push this here, down into this position. So we've got a slight curve going on here. We'll do the same things here. Just adjust this slightly. Move the handle down here so it's flat. We've got a slight amount of curvature to the cable, but not much. We don't want it to look super curvy because it's meant to have tension on it. So that's basically our path. That looks fine. Now what I want to do is go into perspective view, have a look where we've got it. That's fine. Now I need a cross section, and I'm not going to reuse this cross section here, and that's because if I use this cross section and I adjust it, that's going to adjust this and it's going to adjust this cable. So you've got to make sure that you have a unique cross section for everything that you create. So I'm going to create a new circle, and I'm going to just pop it here next to the cable. And let's just create the loft now, which will be our cable. I'm going to go compound objects, loft, get the shape, instance, that. We now have our cable. Now that we have it, I'm just going to move it into position. Let's go to the top view. So we can just make sure that it's inside here. There we are, that's pretty good. Now let's just zoom in on this and have a look at how thick the cable is. Not bad. It's maybe a little bit too chunky at the moment. As you can see, it looks more like it's a rod of metal or something. We'll just make it a little bit thinner just by adjusting the radius here. So there we go. Just knock it down a bit. It looks more like a cable now. And you can see that we've got a misalignment here. Well, that's easy to fix. We can just grab here, go into sub-object mode, grab this vertex, move it over here till it's in the right position. There we go. So now that fits in there nicely. Let's have a look down here if we've got any other misalignments. Nope, that's all in a straight line. So you can see that fits through there nicely. Goes all the way down there. Looks pretty good. Maybe the cable is a little bit too curvy at this point, so we could make some adjustments here. Go back into front view. Go in here and make some adjustments there. Wireframe mode. Just make sure we're in the right two axes here. There we are. We've got the right amount of curvature now, I'd say. Have a look at that in perspective. Yeah, that looks pretty good, I think. What we're going to do now is we're just going to copy this shape here. And the reason for that is just in case this cable over here needs to be different in some way. And we're going to create a new loft from this. So we're going to go loft, get shape. We're going to use the same cross section. So they both share the same cross section. And I'm going to move it into position. So we'll just move it over here. That's fine, I think. And we've got the same issue, but in this case we don't want it to go over here, we want it to go in the opposite direction. So we just select this, move it over in this direction slightly. You can see these two paths are instanced at this point, so let me just undo that, put it back where it was. I just need to break the instancing on this. I'll just break this. Just make sure that the instancing hasn't been broken between here and here. So let me just make a very quick adjustment to check that. Yeah, it did actually. It broke the instancing between not only this path and this path, but also in the actual loft itself. So we'll just delete that loft, select this, recreate the loft, get the shape, click on there, and just move it over here into position. And we'll make the adjustment on the end here, move that over here. There we are. Make sure the cable's correct. Yeah, it's looking fine. So there we are. We've now got the brake cable and the throttle cable in place. The only other thing I want to show you with this is, what about if we wanted it to be, say, twisted wire? Well, for that, I can just zoom in on this shape here. I can put an edit spline modifier on it. We need to go in now and make some modifications. I'll just make sure I'm doing this in top view so it's nice and flat. Just zoom in on it here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say these are now Bezier corners. I'm just going to make sure that I'm in XY mode, and then I'm going to just make some adjustments with these. Let's say like this, and like this. What I'm doing is I'm just building some grooves here. And these will give the impression of being sort of pieces of wire. It's like a 4-piece wire cable. So you've got one bundle there, one there, one there, and one there. Let's have a look at that. We want to try and keep it looking basically circular though. Make some adjustments here. We want these all to be pretty similar in shape, so let's go for that kind of shape, I think. This be a little bit wider. Anyway, I think that's enough really. I think that should do the trick. So now, we have a look at our cable. We'll look at this object here, perspective mode, and just zoom in here. We'll look at the cable. Now you can see it's got these grooves in it. So it actually looks like it's made out of wire. We could probably exaggerate that a bit more, but you've got the basic idea. But obviously it doesn't look like it's twisted because there's no twisting. So now we need to go in and make a deformation. I'm just going to say twist. Let's try making any old value here. You can see that's done a bit of a twist, but not really enough. So we're going to type in a value here, otherwise it might be difficult. So let's try 720 degrees along the length. It looks okay, but it's not particularly twisty, is it? No, you can see it is actually twisting though. Quite cool. So what we need to do now is just change that value until we get something that we think looks good. Say 3600 degrees. Not bad. Yeah, we're getting some quite nice twisting now. I think if we go to wireframe mode, we could possibly put in some more path steps just to facilitate that twisting. It needs to be quite dense, I think. And maybe some shape steps as well. Now we're getting more of a sort of defined groove as well. Let's have a look at that in wireframe mode. And yeah, that looks quite nice. Let's have a look at the twist value again. Let's try double, see if it can handle it. It's a little bit ropey looking, if you excuse the pun, but I think that looks quite nice actually. We zoom out a bit. You can see now that we've got this nice twisted wire look here. If we wanted to, we could just go for the previous one. Yeah, I think that looks okay actually. So we've got this nice twisted wire looking thing going on here. We could do the same thing for here very easily. Just select it. Make sure you've got twist. Select that, and we'll go for 3600. There we are. Got the same kind of twist. Obviously, it needs the same kind of length. We need to increase the number of steps in our shape and also along the length, just to facilitate that kind of twisting. And there we go. We now have a pretty cool looking steering wheel, and we have some really nice looking cables connecting up the brake pedal and the acceleration pedal on our go-kart. So let's move on now, and in the next section we'll look at adding the wheels and the tires to those wheels.